Since the Facebook app has many UI elements, the mockup stage for this app stretches on longer than I would have hoped. The nice thing about this is that the logic of the app is relatively simple, so once the mockup would be done, it should be pretty easy to implement the basic business logic. Notice that the smart portion in Facebook is the backend analysis, which I'll mostly skip. It's a subject for a big data course, not a mobile development course. I discussed the main UI before, so I won't go into a recap of its purpose. We'll mock up the basics so we can get started with the implementation and server code. For now, I'll skip camera and video, as we'll address them later. The big piece is the main UI, which includes the 4 tabs for newsfeed, friends, notifications, and more features. Let's jump right into the main UI. The main form includes 4 containers that are arranged as tabs. You will notice that the tabs default to top placement on Android and bottom placement on iOS. This matches how the native Facebook app behaves. To support this UI, we need container classes representing each tab. We need to add 4 classes named Newsfeed Container, Friends Container, Notifications Container, and More Container. We'll get to those 4 containers one by one, but first I'll explain the main form itself. It's important to place the tabs in the center. They never scroll off the screen and take up the available space. We add each tab and give it a 5mm icon from the material icon set. The camera and chat icons aren't implemented at this time. Search looks like a text field, but it's a button that leads to the search form. I'll implement that form later. This is relatively simple. We also need some CSS to support that. The image includes a few UI IDs we'll cover a bit later when discussing the newsfeed. Let's look at the CSS code behind that. I chose to implement the search UI in the iOS style with a round pill border shape. We create an opaque white tab and give it a small margin in pixels on top and bottom. The tab container below the tab is gray. It lets us form a gray line above and below the tab. The selected tab has a border on some native platforms, so it's important to disable that. Here, we just want a different color for the selected and pressed styles. Once this is done, we have the basic tab UI. We can wire it into the main UI by implementing show main UI in UI controller. Once this is done, pressing login will show the main UI form. Now we can proceed to implement the tabs, but first we need something else.